First of all, I'd just like to say congratulations to everybody who's on the call. You're part of the fellowship, and I think it's a fantastic thing that you're doing and that you've gotten into. Thanks for being here today, taking the time to sit and listen to this and learn a little bit about Steelcase and what we do at Steelcase and the design studio that we've built, within Steelcase globally to try and create, work settings and workplaces for the future. So as Beth mentioned, I'm the global design director for two of the brands within Steelcase, Coalesse and Turnstone, and then also the surface materials team that's responsible for all surface materials across Steelcase globally. I come from an industrial design background. I've been practicing for over 20 years now and part of Steelcase for most of that period. But I also been on the consulting side and done my own projects, and then also been at competitive companies to Steelcase. And so I've been in the furniture industry for quite a period of time and really love that domain. I really love the idea of creating things that people are so close to and become so emotionally connected to. And that's why I'm still at Steelcase. So with that, I'm going to share a little video. It's an intro video that we have of one of our spaces in Germany. It's kind of an overview of what customers might experience if they were to come to our building in Germany. But it's also where our design and development teams sit. We actually sit with the people that sell the things. We sit where we bring customers so that we can learn and talk and experiment on ourselves.
It's a new day. 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 It's a new day.
So, the interesting thing I find about Steelcase and the thing that I think is slightly differentiated about us is often people will say to me, Steelcase, yeah, I know Steelcase. You're a furniture company, right? And I think the short answer can be yes, we are. But the long answer is kind of. And the reason I say kind of is because, yes, we design and develop furniture, but we design and develop spaces. We design and develop places for people to work, places for people to innovate and do new things. And the reason that that's not just a furniture company is we have parts of our business that focus on the flooring and the wires and the parts of the building that are considered invisible and the infrastructure. We have part of our company that focuses on the vertical surfaces and how you can write on them and create things together. We have part of our company that's focusing on technologies and softwares and tracking within the workplace to help people understand how to work better together. And so we really create environments, we really create spaces. And that's why within Steelcase, there's a series of brands that help make that up. And the three primary brands that you'll find within Steelcase are the Steelcase brand itself, the Coalesse brand, and the Turnstone brand. And the Steelcase brand, when you think about Steelcase and what it does and where it places its focus, is it's on work. It's on the process of work. It's on what we sometimes would refer to even as performance, and how we can help people to perform at their best. And especially with people working from everywhere now, how do we help them do that? The chairs that one would sit in to remain healthy, the ergonomics of that chair and the adjustments of it, the materiality choices on it, and the ways that it supports the human body while at work are critically important to us. The desk that one would sit at and how it can adjust, it can change postures, it can go from a low position to a high position. You can have desks that are fixed, like shown in this drawing, and have an adjacency to each other, have a location near each other, so you can allow people to get up from one position and move to another position and meet with somebody. And so as Steelcase thinks about what it's doing, it's really focused at that work that's happening at the desk, near the desk, and in meeting rooms. Those spaces where we really say, critical work processes are happening within an organization. And the second primary brand within Steelcase Inc. is Coalesse. And Coalesse is what I consider an adjacent brand to the bigger company of Steelcase. And Coalesse focuses on three types of space. They talk about personal space for personal focus and rejuvenation, spaces that you can go to take a break, to get away a little bit, to concentrate, to find a moment from the chaos that sometimes we all find within the office environment. But they also focus on social spaces like the space you see here, where it's a cafe space. It's a space that you might eat lunch at. It's a space where you might share a coffee at. It's a space where you can work at it and people come together and do work. And then we also focus on collaborative spaces, but we say creative collaboration, spaces where people come together to create new things. When they walk out of that space, they have something new that they didn't have when they walked into that space. It's not a space just for sharing content or having a meeting. It's a space for going in and doing something new together. And it's that combination of those spaces and their sensibility, and how that sensibility can be almost a little more domestic, a little bit softer, a little bit more welcoming, inviting type of space where you would bring people to casually interact, to relax slightly and do that part of work that I think is critically important, which is the soft side of work, the soft skills that we all have to make the hard parts of work actually happen. The skills of being able to actually talk to somebody and build trust and that connection that you have to have with your coworkers to do your best work. And so that's really Coalesce's mission and focus. And when you look at the things that they're doing and thinking about, you'll see a different kind of aesthetic and personality to them, because they're really trying to evoke a different sense of purpose and behavior when in those types of spaces. And then the last brand, the primary brands for us, is called Turnstone. And Turnstone is a brand that we really say is for companies that are starting something new, that are for people that are starting something new, that is about smaller companies. Sometimes people want a different look and feel than a more corporate environment, the more traditional workspaces that you might imagine when you think of the office. And Turnstone is sometimes for what we call entrepreneurs. And an entrepreneur is a group within a large organization. So it's like an entrepreneur, but it's inside of a larger company. And that idea that sometimes you have groups within a large company that need to act and behave and actually look and feel differently than the rest of the company. And that group wants to set up their space with a different look and feel than the rest of the company. And often that's a look and feel that isn't as corporate, that isn't as formal, that isn't maybe as conservative as some companies often are. And so they'll look to Turnstone to help create spaces with furniture that's a little more casual, a little fun, has a youthful spirit to it. It has an approachability and a materiality that's slightly different. It has an approachability in its price point as well, as it's our less expensive or more approachable brand as far as how we position them, in the marketplace. And so with those three brands, we really try and serve the whole market, where we're saying we can give you a little bit of our knowledge and our research and ability to set up a workplace at whatever style and whatever choices you're trying to make for that, and whatever price point you might like or can manage based on where you're at in the maturity of your company. And so those really, as we think about it, are our three primary brands. But what you'll find with Steelcase is the way that we get to 3.75 billion US dollars in turnover globally is by having additional brands. And those additional brands help us serve additional parts of the market. They help fill in the gaps. They help us think about other areas where people are working and how we might also help those people solve for their workplace issues. And so what you'll notice under our brands is that there's a Steelcase education brand, and it's primarily focused on schools, higher education, how we can help universities think about teaching differently, how we can help the teachers leverage some of our research into new ways of teaching, new ways of getting the classes to interact with each other and allowing the students to learn. We have Steelcase Health. Steelcase Health is, as you can imagine, focused on healthcare and the healthcare industry. And not only what you traditionally might think of when you think of health as hospitals and doctors, but also research institutions where they're working on pharmaceuticals, where they're researching diseases, where they're thinking about those things that affect human well-being. And those spaces often are very different. They have similar needs and the people are trying to do similar things, but the postures that they might need to leverage to look through a microscope or use a gas set is often very different than sitting at a desk. Then you see Coalesse and Turnstone, and we talked about those. Design Tex is one of our companies, and they're focused purely on surface materials. So fabrics, wall coverings, anything that kind of gives a personality to the objects that we create. And they're creating new products, new fabrics. They have mills that they work with to create the designs that their design team in New York is focused on creating. And those materials go across all of our brands. And so they're creating materials for healthcare, as well as for education, as well as for primary office spaces. AMQ is focused on adjustability, so desks that go up and down, but also at a very aggressive price point. What we find is sometimes there are people who are looking for things that are even lower in cost than Turnstone. And so we're able to meet some of those needs through a brand like AMQ. If you're from Europe, and specifically England or the UK area, you might know Orangebox. Orangebox is a brand that really became well known from their pods, these little small cubicle-like offices that you could set up within a larger office. And so they make these rooms within rooms that allow people to have meetings and have acoustic privacy, have ventilation, have proper lighting, and support the technology that one might want in a meeting space. And those things can be placed now all over the world. They also have a variety of furniture solutions. And so now in Europe primarily, and being localized in the Americas too, is Orange Box and how they fit in with the rest of the things we offer. And then Smith Systems, if you know education furniture, you might know Smith Systems. They are a Steelcase brand and is partly where our education team really focuses. They leverage Smith Systems as a part of our development process. So we do have Steelcase education, but then we also have Smith Systems that's purely focused on education and a partner to the Steelcase education brand. In addition, and these are brands that you might know more as residential or retail type brands, brands that you might have even purchased things for your own homes. Blue Dot, Moy, Bolia, Nanny Markenia, Carl Hansen and Sons out of Denmark. Sage Green Life creates living green walls. They are known for their ability to bring living material inside. The units that they build actually have lighting, water delivery, all within an enclosed system that keeps this living wall, viable within a dark inner sanctum of a building. And so they're nice for us because that helps us to build out those spaces that you see in some of our images and bring in that biophilic component that we think is so important, the outdoors into those workspaces. Emu is an Italian outdoor furniture company. And so not only are we trying to bring outdoor life to the indoors, we're also trying to help people take their indoor work to the outdoors. Emu helps us do that as they create outdoor furniture. Snapcab is similar to Orange Box, creating these cubes. Extremis is another outdoor brand of ours. Uhuru, smaller batch, more kind of boutique, interesting components. Floss, very global lighting company. Quite, often, you'll look around and not even realize it, and there's floss lights everywhere around you. They're kind of these beautifully designed, ubiquitous lights that really complement making out a space, really fulfilling some of the settings that we try and create. Vicarbe is a Spanish brand. Microsoft is a technology partner. West Elm, a residential brand that now is trying to bring that sensibility into the workplace as well. Polyvision focuses on technology and whiteboard, higher ed whiteboards, so interactive whiteboards. And then Mitchell Gold and Bob Williams. And so again, you see there's a huge list of kind of adjacent partners that we have that help us think about space and those things that our customers might ask for. And then in addition to that, we have something that we call Marketplace. And if you were to go to the website and you were to look at Steelcase Marketplace, what you'll find is in there, you can find even additional things that get into the accessories, get into any of the other parts of a workplace that I haven't talked about, and how we can help solve for all of the dimensions that one might think they need to create the workplace that they're trying to build for their employees, right? So that's the world of Steelcase. We're about 13,000 people. We're kind of going up and down globally. We have people really focused in 3 large development centers. One is in Grand Rapids, Michigan. One is in Munich, like the videos you saw. And then one is in Hong Kong. And what we're trying to do is have an innovation center located in every part of the world. We're trying to make sure that anything that we're working on is globally relevant, that we're getting the perspectives from the market that our customers are working in, and that we need to understand to make our products and our solutions applicable everywhere. And so by having design studios and innovation centers in all parts of the world, we can bring those influences from all parts of the world into any product that we're working on, any project that we're working on, and how we then industrialize it all over the world to make it relevant for everybody. Yeah, as I just said, these are our 3 primary locations. And then the last couple of locations is New York, as I mentioned, with Design Techs, and Portland, Oregon. And Portland, Oregon is where we focus on technology. They're developing all of our smart tools, sensors within the workplace, sensors that don't look at people's faces and recognize who the person is in a space, but that can recognize the number of people that are in a space, whether a space is being used well or not, whether we can take that data and help our customers think about their spaces differently, and how that information might have you change a 10-person meeting room into 2 5-person collaboration rooms because the 10-person room is not getting used very often, or is often only getting used by 5. We're helping our customers take the information from their own spaces and push it back into the space programming and the architecture side of their business to help them make the most of the workplaces that they're building. So with that, and obviously there was a lot said there, what I'll encourage you to do is know that you heard there's an opportunity for questions, and at the end of this, we're going to have an opportunity for me to kind of chat with you directly. Just note that as I'm going along, it's not possible for me to see your questions, so please just add the questions and we'll come back to them at the end. But how do we do that? How are we thinking about those 3 locations, and what are we doing there, and what is the design team that resides there, and how are they working is what I kind of want to spend the rest of the time talking about. And so our team, the way that we've built our design studio is to try and pull together a pretty diverse group of individuals that all come from different parts of the design process, and that together, by adding in their individual expertises, they can make all of our solutions and all of our work richer, more global, more relevant in today's workplace. And so to do that, we actually have designers, architects, engineers, we hire researchers, we have material specialists, and then we have model makers. And these people are a part of every one of those innovation centers that you see around the world. We have different size teams in every part of the world, the largest team being in Grand Rapids. But we do make sure that each innovation center, each team that we have globally has the richness and diversity to points of view to make the projects the best that they can be. So with that, we have kind of a traditional design process that all of us globally leverage and use across all disciplines. And it's based on these kind of 6 steps that we think of and talk about. And it's probably very similar to what you've been taught in school, and how they're having you think about your project classes. And it's this idea that to start anything, you need to understand it first. You need to put yourself in the shoes of somebody and be able to empathize and really contextualize the problem. You need to observe. This is the true way to understand something. I mean, you can do secondary research and understanding, but to get primary research, you need to observe it. And then synthesize. We move into realization. We prototype everything, and we measure it. So when you think about understand, when we start to understand, when we have a belief, when we say, hey, you know what, I think this is a problem. I think that I see people challenged with this. I see, as I visit customers, people struggling with this part of work. And we come back to the office and we start talking to each other. The first thing that we do once we have that hypothesis is to try and understand it deeper. And we go very deep. And then we have a group that we will assign this to, and we say, find every bit of secondary research that you possibly can on this subject. And we just really tear that apart. We spend a lot of time going into that secondary research and trying to understand what others have already done, what is already out there, and what is already known about a subject, and then how we might leverage that to influence and inform that hypothesis that we have, right? After we start that understanding process, we go out and observe. We always observe. And it's one of the reasons I think actually that I really love staying at Steelcase, and I'm still at Steelcase, is the belief that they have in research and the belief that they have in having designers a part of that research process. And what is one of the differentiators I think in Steelcase is how much research we do into the workplace. And we go out and we watch people work everywhere. We watch them work in the office. We watch them work on airplanes. We watch them work in hotels. We watch them work at home. Anywhere we can find people working, we try and watch them. And what we're watching for is those pain points, you know, and where people are struggling to be their best. Because at the end of the day, what we're really trying to do is make work easier for people, make it better, because we're all at work so long that it shouldn't be difficult. It shouldn't be something that is a struggle. And if we can offload those issues that shouldn't be difficult and allow your brain to focus on those things that are difficult, we think you'll do better work. And so we go out and we watch, we look, we try and find what we call emergent signals, early signals, emergent patterns, things that aren't maybe popping up everywhere, but occasionally. And we start to see it more than once as we're out in different locations. And we start to hear from people the same things about what they're struggling with. And for us, that's a early signal to, hey, there's an opportunity to solve for something here. And that's the process of synthesizing those two bodies of work. So we take all of the understanding phase, the secondary research, anything that's already been done, even by ourselves. We take all of that work that we've just observed, and we kind of try and synthesize it down and make a logic of it. We try and create a language of it and help others to be able to understand and think about those things that we're seeing and feeling and believing. And that synthesis is what really leads to what we call design principles. And those design principles are what will give a team to go act on. And so the synthesis, to me, is the art. It's the key to a successful project. If you have somebody who's really great at synthesis and who can see the unseen, the unobservable by most people, and can pull that out and say to somebody, hey, if you could solve for this, it would be special. It's hard. And so those people that are great at synthesis are the ones that drive great projects, and those projects that really, I think, set a new tone or go in a new direction for work and the things that we're interested in. From there, we say realize, which means start to make things. And we make everything full scale, to be honest with you. We make some scale models, once in a while we'll make small things, but really not very often. Really, we feel like we have to see it and we have to experience it and we have to get inside of it and we have to kind of test on ourselves these ideas and what it's like to be inside of those spaces or be at a desk like that or work with somebody else in certain ways. And so very quickly, as we move out of sketching, it's a way of sketching for us. It's 3D sketching. And we essentially 3D sketch in full scale. And realization for us is very important. We have huge areas within our facilities dedicated to models and prototypes. And what realization leads to is prototypes. And how we really differentiate between those two is we move from something that's kind of a sketch to something that's a working object, a working version of something that we believe, right? And that's a prototype for us. As we start to test on ourselves, we'll connect computers and objects and spaces to each other in ways that they weren't before, and we'll use them, and then we'll have others use them, and sometimes we even have some of our customers use them, and then we look for feedback, and it's an iterative loop for us where we're sketching in more, you're continuing to watch, we're still doing that observation, but now we're observing people using our prototypes, people trying to do what we think that they're going to do with these things. And if they still have a pain point, iterating again on it and saying, nope, it's not good enough. Or, I think we're getting close. Now I think we're starting to see something that's getting solved for and what we were thinking about. And so again, this realization prototype phase for us is critically important, and something we spend a lot of money on and a lot of time in and go over and over in. And it's kind of for me, it's a designer's dream come true, because that's what you do in design school. You get to make all these prototypes, and we have huge model shops. We have a large area within all of our facilities dedicated to making prototypes. And yes, we have model makers, as I mentioned, but we also train all of the designers and engineers on how to use the tools, and so that they can go into the model shop as well, and they can partner with those model makers to test things, to try things, to iterate on their own, and to prototype more. So this bucket for us is really important. And then what we do once we start to feel confident about something is measure it. We literally put things out, and we define what it is we want to learn and how we believe we will be successful. And we let people try. We have them test a chair. We have them move the arm up and down. We try to stay as far away from that as possible, so that we're not biasing the information, so that we're not leading them to use it in the way that we want them to, and instead seeing if they'll use it in the way that we want them to. And that measurement for us is really important, because it validates or invalidates our ideas. It helps us to understand whether those things the design team is kind of believing are actually believable. Do people actually do what we think? And were they faster? Were they better? Were they happier? Did they feel better at the end of the day than they did at the beginning of the day? And it's all a measurement. And there's a lot of ways of trying to measure. We try and be as data centric as possible, but then there's also the emotional side to measurement, where we ask people their opinion. We ask tons of questions and try and elicit feedback, and everyone's got a different opinion and feels things differently. And so one person saying something feels soft might be hard to somebody else. And even though the data says the cushions are identical, sometimes people will feel them differently. And so that's why we combine those two, the measurement and, sorry, my phone is vibrating, it's even on silent. We combine those two to make the most of them, right? So where do we go from there? What does this mean? What are we thinking about? What are we working on next? And how do we leverage all of this? I think really becomes the question that one would ask when thinking about that process and what I just said we go through. Well, what we're finding is it's critically important to right now be thinking about the individual and how individual work is changing in the future, and how those individuals now make a part of a larger community. And how do we make the spaces that individuals are trying to work in on their own healthier, support their well-being in new ways, allow them to focus and do those things that they're expected to do while at work. We're also looking at collaborative work. We're very focused on collaborative work. The thing that we believe and we know is really, if you step back and you think about it, you can um, do some work almost anywhere. We've, I think, even proven that over the last several months, and how we've all been working from different locations and using video to do work. You can do email from almost anywhere, right? But collaborative work is hard. The work that I come to the workplace for, the work that I think we're all being asked to do and think about, is harder than work I can do by myself. If it's just doing emails and answering questions and doing simple things that I can do by myself, then it's a different space and a different need that I have than a really hard problem. Like some of these problems that I'm telling you about, some of these things that I'm showing you, you have to do with others. And so how do we create spaces that support people to do collaborative work, to bring people together in ways that they're solving problems that one can't solve by themselves? There's so many problems now that before, I would say, one could do by themselves, now can't. That everything is so complex, and there is so much information in the world that one can't on his own try and get everything that he needs to be successful at solving that problem by themselves. And that's where collaborative work is so important and why we're so focused on it. And then obviously there's this idea of distributed work. And now more than ever, we have people distributed. We have people who can't get into the workplace. We have people who are not worried really about the workplace and their coworkers as much as their commute to work. The interesting thing that I've been finding in living in Munich is the people who ride their bike or walk to work were the ones that were the least worried about coming back to work. The people who are on the subway, the people who are commuting in cramped quarters are the ones who are most worried about coming back to work. So how do we support work now that people are distributed and are going to be working from even more locations than they were before? And how do those people not feel like they're at a disadvantage to the people that are actually at the workplace? The people that happen to be sitting next to each other shouldn't be able to do things that the person that's remote can't. And so we're really focused on how do we take what's happening with distributed work, how do we take what's happening with people's concerns and their health and support that in a way with both space and technology to allow distributed work to be even better and richer in the future. We talk to our customers, and we do, as I said, a lot of research. The 5 primary things that we're hearing from the market is that there's a real need to now, more than ever, understand how to optimize the real estate that a company has. Imagine if yesterday you had a building and you had 100 employees in it, and it was 100 square meters. And tomorrow, you can only have half of those employees in there. How do you now optimize that space? How do you use it differently than you used to use it? What has to change within that space for a company to feel like the money it's spending on that space makes sense and that they can get the worth out of it, right? They also want from us support in how to help their people collaborate. As I said, it's a critical factor that we're focused on and trying to solve for, but it's what we're hearing from our customers as well. It's what they're telling us is they're very worried about collaboration and how they keep their people collaborating now that they're so distributed. Additionally, they're thinking about, God, the world's changed. And I don't know how I get the best employees now. How do I attract people to come to my company now that no one can come to my company? How do I make them interested in what I'm doing and the places that we're going to do that in, even though right now they can't come to those places? And how do I get those people that I have to stay engaged? How do I attract the best talent, and how do I engage the talent that I have to be as connected and passionate about the projects that they're working on, even though there's all of these other distractions happening in the world? And through space and through the products that we offer, we believe that we can help do that. We help companies build spaces that will attract the best employees and engage those people that they already have. They're worried about brand, their own brand, their culture. How do they build culture now that they can't go to the workplace, that their people can't be next to each other, that you can't learn about what a company's like? You can't get, the water cooler type conversations that you used to be able to get that really taught you about what a company was like and why you want to be a part of that company and what it is that the company's thinking about and why you should care. And then, of course, well-being. You'll hear me talk about well-being a lot. It's great for me to hear from so many of our customers, our clients, of architects and designers that we speak with, and the need for well-being to be something to solve for, that they want spaces that focus on the workers' well-being and the well-being of not just the individual, but also the group, the whole company. And so it's a philosophy and a belief that they really want our help in solving. So with that, what we have is what we call this interconnected workplace strategy. And what we're doing is we're trying to take this idea of how do you leverage the interconnected world, right? And think about how people need technology, but people also need people, right? And people need spaces that merge those two things together to be able to help them collaborate and connect better than ever before, right? They, when are creating spaces, want greater choice and control. And the reason that I love the idea of choice and control is it's about architects and designers and allowing them to specify and have greater choice and control, but it's also about the users and allowing them to move through the space and having greater choice and control of where they're sitting and how they're working and those things that they're doing within the workplace. The thing that we then help do is create this idea of a palette, where we can help people create a palette of places to work, a palette of postures, and the ability to state what kind of presence one has, right? I'm at work versus I'm on work. And where that leaves our real opportunity is bringing in that cultural context, bringing in that side of work where we're able to say, hey, this is how globally that's affecting your company and how we can help you create spaces that solve for that. So now, where are we at? What are we thinking about? We're thinking about disease and work and fear and trust and how individuals with each other now build that new circle of trust, and how they're thinking about coming back to the workplace, even though the things within the workplace have changed. And even though they don't know what's going on with the people that are closest to them. The thing that we've started to find, and the belief that we have, is people are redefining what we call their circle of trust. And they're moving from themselves to those people that are in their immediate family and the known part of their life, right? And those people that they feel are safe to be around and that are healthy and that they don't have to worry about becoming sick from. It's interesting that then we found that it's moving out to close coworkers, the people that are within a group at work that they work with, but maybe not all of work. and then it goes to the rest of work, and then it goes to the rest of the public. And how we help people navigate this and their thinking around this is one of the things that we're very, very focused on right now. And you see all of these things happening in the world where we're putting up shields between people in work, but we're giving people ways of cleaning their hands and getting measured as they come to work. We're creating new protocols, and how that's going to affect the work culture and the workplace is a big focus of what we're talking about right now. And the thing that we're really doing is helping companies and focusing our projects on this idea of how do we return to work, and what are people going to want in the short term? How are we thinking about the workplace and how it's changed based on what's been happening and our need to work virtually? And what will that mean in the near future? And so we say, what's that new normal? What's the after vaccine normal? What will people expect of a workplace in 12 to 24 months? How will they behave differently, interact with each other differently, collaborate differently, think about the things that they do on a daily basis differently now that they've been through this? And will they have different expectations of the places that they work at and how often they go to those places? And then lastly, there's a part of that we're looking at too, which is the extreme side for us of that, which is it's a completely virtual world. No one ever goes back to the workplace. Everyone still works, but they only work virtually. And what would that mean? And what we're trying to do is push both ends of that spectrum, really allow ourselves the tension between a physical place and where we know people will want to go, and that virtual place where people might go if they don't think the world becomes safe again. And so from there, we said, all right, what are the design principles we're going to focus on and think about and really try and solve for in our next projects? And the first is this idea of home as more than just a place for me by myself. Supporting people in a place that we would call their home base at work, where people can come by and visit them and talk with them and work at the desk, at those places where you might have said it's my space. My space moves to a team space and a group space. And you have spaces that are, before owned, but now might be shared. You have people only coming in 1 or 2 days a week. What happens to that space on those other days? How do we support other people leveraging that space? And then how do we help them in their iSpaces at home? How does their home actually support bringing other people in, but maybe now digitally, virtually, different ways than it did before? The other design principle that we're thinking about is this idea of don't just shrink your space, but rethink your space. It's, when we talk to customers, a lot of them are saying, hey, I need to, now get rid of some of my real estate. I don't have as many people coming into the office. I need to change the things that I was doing yesterday, and I need less space to do that. So I want to shrink. And what we're finding is, actually, maybe that's not the right approach or the best approach. What you need to do is just rethink that space, rethink how you plan it. And what we're finding is maybe you need less space for individual work and people sitting at the desk, and more space for people to come together, more space to collaborate, more space for meetings and sharing and project teams to own it as a group. And how that will change the overall floor plate to be more social, more cafes, more interactive and prototyping type spaces could be interesting. We're really thinking about how the workplace can be a nurturing place, a place that does think about your well-being, that people at the end of the day, in my dream is that at the end of the day, you could actually leave a space feeling better than you did when you came in. Because when you talk to most people today, when they leave work, they often feel exhausted, they feel tired, they feel um, worse than when they showed up. And what we want is to have people showing up saying, wow, at the end of the day, I felt great. I felt like I could even stay longer. If it wasn't so late, I would have. And that's a state of like, how can that space give back to individuals? How can we make that a better place? And then obviously last is this idea of creative collaboration. And how do we truly now help people collaborate and be creative when doing that differently? Because now we're doing it in different ways. We're going to do it not only with 4 people sitting around a table and comparing information, but we're going to do it with people who are virtual and distributed and trying to feel as though they're as present and connected to the people that are at the table as anyone else. And so with that, I'm going to give it back to Alyssa and Beth and see if there were any questions or things that you might want to talk about. I think I might have run over a little bit. Did I go long, Alyssa?
You're good. We have a few minutes left to squeeze in a couple questions.
All right.
What different patterns do you see around the world in terms of workspaces? Are there any differences or similarities that you could share?
I think the thing I would say is globally, the behavioral patterns, the needs of the workers are the same. The largest differences that we see are the cost of real estate and the amount of space allocated to people. And so in some regions, an individual might have much less space as an individual workspace than in other regions. And they still yet have the same needs. And what we really know is that the pattern of people moving around, changing their postures, wanting to connect with each other is globally present and desired by everybody. The desire to manage acoustics better. So you see a lot of people wearing headphones, you see people trying to solve it on their own. Large spaces still have the need to deal with acoustics. And that is a pattern that everywhere I go, I see. And then lastly is lighting usually. People are always talking to us, no matter where we are in the world, about the light that they need to be able to see things well and to work well, and how they have more user, and what we call is user control, how the individual can control their own space, control how warm it feels, control the air in the space, control the light in the space, control any of those things that they feel they need for their personal comfort. And that's global.
Absolutely. Is Steelcase planning on entering the home office furniture market due to the major shift to working from home?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, absolutely. We really are. Here's my home office. Yes, and yes, I would say. There is a huge shift. We have had dabblings where we've done things that I would say really do allow for the home office. But now you will see a major pivot from us and support for more solutions that are for the home office, and the knowledge that there are going to be more people working from home, at least part of the time.
Absolutely. Synthesize is a very interesting process. Do you mind sharing some examples of that? What are some ideas that in this category of seeing the invisible?
Yeah, so a great example might be, we went to a space and we were walking around, and they had screens in between some of the desks, and somebody had put a blanket over one of the screens, and another person had a tape that they connect their monitor to the screen. We sat and we watched, and we were trying to figure out what they were doing. I finally walked up to the person and said, "So what's that for?" And they said, and they said, at 4 o'clock, the sun comes through that window, comes right in here like this, and it makes it to where I can't see my screen. And so what I do is I tape it to here, and it keeps the light from coming through. And it was such a simple thing that you said, okay, well, I could have designed that with a little angle that would have been a visor and would protected you from the sun, or I could have made it adjustable based on where it was in the space to allow you to control that. Or I could have, and you could easily start brainstorming ways of solving for little issues like that you'd never know or never see unless you go out and observe, and then try and synthesize that into a, hey, we can solve for type thing. Synthesize for us is, that that act of, you see these Post-it notes, the times when you guys brainstorm and everyone's doing Post-it notes. And as you then stop after, an hour of doing Post-it notes, you'll say, oh my God, look, there are 4 Post-it notes here with screens on them. There's 10 with stools. There's 4 with, little tables. You put those into buckets, and that's the synthesizing for us too, is to try and get things into buckets and say, wow, that seems like there's a big opportunity here. And sometimes it's hey, I kept seeing people trying to adjust their screens. If I only saw it once, then it's maybe bad application within the building, and the architect could have changed the orientation of some of the desks. But if you see it a bunch of places, then you go, hey, there's an emergent pattern of people trying to control their screens to manage light coming into the space that we should address, right? And so that's synthesize.
It's a great example. Thank you for sharing. We're just out of time for today, but I have one final question. Any last words of advice or wisdom to leave with the students tuning in today?
I wish I had more time to tell you things I believe, but if I had one last bit of advice, the thing I would say is be super curious. Try and understand and watch and be observant as much as possible on every part of life, and say yes to everything. The reason I think that I've been lucky is that anytime somebody's asked me to do something, I usually say yes. It's like, hey, do you want to go be on this project? Even though I don't have the time, even though I'm completely underwater, I say yes, because I want the experience. I want to be a part of it. I want to learn it. I want to get enriched by it. And the more that you believe there's nothing below you and that you can try and do anything because you'll learn from it, I think the better you'll be as a designer and just as an individual in a community. So stay curious, stay passionate, and say yes.
Excellent advice. Thank you. John, I want to say a huge thank you for taking the time to come on and give such an insightful presentation. We absolutely appreciate it. Students, thank you so much for taking the time to tune in today. If you'd like to learn more about Steelcase, Coalesse, or Turnstone, you can visit their websites, steelcase.com, coalesce.com, myturnstone.com, or their Instagram channels at Steelcase, Coalesse, or myturnstone. If you'd like to learn more about Be Original Americas, you can visit beoriginalamericas.com or our Instagram at beoriginal USA. Thank you.